Welcome to Personal Landscapes. I'm Brian Murdoch. For show notes, club member bonuses, and more conversations, go to personallandscapespodcast.com. When Rory Maclean's wife died of cancer at age 55, he set out on a series of journeys that changed his life. His newest book is an examination of grief, a celebration of love, and a cross-cultural exploration of the afterlife. This is an unusual topic for me, and at first I wasn't sure how to approach it, or if I even wanted to on a podcast that focuses on writing about place. As a skeptic, I don't subscribe to a religion or believe in life after death, but as an anthropology graduate, I have an abiding interest in ritual and comparative religion. Like most of you, I've also experienced grief and loss, and I know that there will be more in my future. I think there's something for each of us in this book, including plenty of travel for you personal landscapes purists. You'll especially enjoy Rory's first-hand accounts of participating in rituals in Bhutan, the Peruvian Amazon, South Africa, and with First Nations peoples in North America. Rory Maclean is the author of Geography of Heaven, Berlin, Portrait of a City, Stalin's Nose, and other books. He's a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature and the founder and curator of the annual Sherborne Travel Writing Festival. We spoke about the nature of grief, cross-cultural accounts of the afterlife, and what ancient rituals can teach us about modernity. One quick note before we jump in. As you know, Personal Landscapes relies on the support of listeners like you to keep going. This one-man show has to become financially sustainable to continue. If you don't want this podcast to become yet another ghost in the internet afterlife, then please consider joining my members club. You'll support this work and get cool book lover bonuses for less than the cost of a ticket to paradise. Go to personallandscapespodcast.com to find out more. And now, here's my latest conversation with Rory Maclean. Your opening chapter is among the most powerful scenes, I think, in any of your books, but it must have been so difficult to write it.
It was very difficult to write about that, to write about the moment of her death. But as in the whole book, it was cathartic for me. It enabled me to live. Did I want to live that moment again? No, but I needed to come to terms with it, to begin to accept the fact, the undisputable fact that she was dead, and that moment was so emotional, of course, for me, the moment of her death, that I in a way, I channeled it. I channeled my emotions, but at times when it's just so normal in losing someone you love, when you sort of block things out and don't want to think about it, I had to keep alive to that moment, so I would channel the emotions from that time, which in a way helped to open so many doors, because I was there in that moment, that moment when she left mortal life. We all have to go through this in one form or another, the loss of those we love, but it's so hard for all of us to go through this, and she was diagnosed when the cancer was already on stage 4, so it was incurable. And Katrine was a very beautiful, very, very full-bodied, shall we say, woman. I can still call her a young woman at age 55, but after the diagnosis, over the first 5 weeks, it was extraordinary. Her body just wasted away, and I would have to help her stand in the shower, and she just became thinner and thinner. And some of the most horrific pictures that we know from genocides or from the Second World War, that's what she became like. And then the oncologist found the right drug, Alecensa, and it was like a transformation. She just the weight came back on, and they said to us, the oncologist said she you can open the champagne. Many patients tick on for years with this drug, But then that clever cancer, it mutated, and and it just sort of snuck up, and yeah, she died age 55, 7 months after diagnosis.
Years earlier, you took care of your mother at home when she was dying of cancer, and you describe your book "Gift of Time" as being about striving for a good death. Did that experience make taking care of your wife any easier, or did it bring back those earlier sorrows and compound them?
Well, but, yes, both. Did it make it easier? I knew what to expect, Ryan. I knew I knew where this was going, where we all will go, and so it did make it easier in a way, but of course, it was a different emotion. You know, that losing one's parent, that's in a way, that's as it's meant to be. Children are meant to outlive their parents, and I did. And but losing a partner, of course, everyone who has a partner will one or other will lose them, and so I found it really, 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 really painful and hard, and for the first couple of months, I just listened to music and wept and ran away. I ran away, as a travel writer, I got lost. As in your travel writing, we tend to have a good sense of geography. We tend to know our way around. W and I would drive up dead ends, cul-de-sacs, and I would look at maps, totally not understanding what was in the page, and I would become lost, and I also lost my sense of balance, literally. I'd sort of in the middle of the street start to fall over and grab onto the nearest passerby. And then I had this dream that Katrine had left me, and she was living at a new address, but it wasn't quite ready for her to tell me what that address was. And and that and that was part of this remarkable shift, this remarkable sense of connection. Of course, I understood the psychology behind grief, well, if you like, biologically, mechanically, psychologically, what was happening to me. But at the same time, there was this this reality, this different way of looking at the world became more and more dominant in my thinking.
And even hearing you talk about this, like there's so many points in the book that I think anyone can relate to. Like I often thought about my father while reading. He died of cancer when I was 33, and I looked after him in the hospital. And your mention of meeting Katrine some 3 decades earlier made your story very immediate for me because that's roughly how long ago I met my wife. So because you write with such detail and honesty, I, as a reader, was simultaneously remembering my own losses and wondering how I'll handle the losses to come.
I'm so sorry for the loss of your father, but it's inevitable. It's inevitable. It will come to us all, and it's almost like I don't like the word calling, but I haven't found the right word yet. It's a duty is better. I felt this whole process, I had a duty because of what I experienced with a comparatively young wife, with partner, with the love of my life. I felt I had a duty. I felt in a way it was our duty, Katrine's and my duty, to tell the story, to tell the story of what happened. So, so as to help, to be a crutch, to be there for others who inevitably, sad, so tragically, will go through the same thing.
So you write about scattering some of her ashes at a site on the North Downs. Why did she choose to have her ashes scattered in these places rather than a more traditional burial? And how did that feel for you as a mourner, not having a specific place to go back to?
When she was getting better in this sort of middle period, when the first drug was working so well before the cancer mutated, we were walking. I was living then in an English village, and we went for a walk around the churchyard, and and she said to me, "I want to talk to you about where my ashes will go." And I went, "No, no, 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 love. We don't need to talk about that. You know, for goodness sake." Entering the denial stage. Now 3 months death. Not that I knew that. And she said, no, I want to talk about it. Okay. Don't mess with me at the moment. And so she named these 5 places where she, which I thought was extraordinary, named 5 specific places which she loved, which were very important to us. In 2 places in Scotland where we had lived for a while, a place in Berlin, her parents' grave in southern England, and in our garden in Dorset. So those were the 5 places, and I think she sensed that the ashes in some way could represent this notion that of a wholeness in the world, that there is a wholeness in life, in existence, and by spreading out her ashes, spreading out the physical remains of her around the world, it was it was in some way recognizing that this the universality.
In that same scene on the North Downs in the book, you say, I was no churchgoer. My faith was wishy-washy and ill-defined, based on rational thinking rather than any sense of the divine. And yet, a single brilliant sunbeam falling through the rain clouds set you off on the quest that you describe in the book. So why was that moment and that experience so significant for you?
Ryan, it was this totally typically English springtime, overcast day, no sunlight anywhere. We've just myself and my daughter and her brothers had just buried the last of her ashes in her parents' grave, and I was left alone at the grave. And on this overcast day, the sun came out, and it just shone directly on not simply on the churchyard, not simply on the grave, but I had laid the coronet of wild flowers which she had made for her wedding, and had worn in that churchyard 33 years earlier. And I laid it on top of on the grave, and that's where the beam of sunlight fell. It was of course, it was a fluke of the weather, but isn't that extraordinary? How no light any I had to take a photograph. I have a photograph of this drab, cloudy English churchyard and this beam of sunlight on her bridal coronet. It was an extraordinary moment, and so I said, "Hello, love." And that was, if you like, a beginning of that was not if you like, that was the beginning of an opening. It felt like not only was I looking for her, because that was the decision that was coming, then I had to go look for her because I had never written a book without her by my side.
Hmm.
It was also a sense that she was, and I have to put that in quotes, she was acknowledging that and was reaching back to me, as was later told to me and was suggested to me. It was like she was on her own journey. Her soul, her spirit was on its own journey. And she was excited about that journey. Yet at the same time, she was looking back at me and sharing that excitement and saying, look what there is. Look what we didn't know about. Look what is unseen.
This set you off on such an interesting quest and such a remarkable journey. And it's difficult for a person in the West, socialized as we've been to science and skepticism. And you do a really nice job of balancing skepticism with a desire to believe in some sort of survival of the individual after death throughout the book. And you keep coming back to these questions. So did you struggle between those two poles throughout your journeys?
Struggle's not quite the right word. I was profoundly aware of my skepticism all the way through, yet becoming increasingly convinced by this other reality, finding the space to come to believe, have faith in another reality, something immortal. So yes, the transient and the immortal, they were infused in me and in my journey. And so doubt was always there. Even now, 5 years on, every morning I have a quiet moment of meditation, and there is the doubt. At the same time, faith is there as well. Faith, belief in the a faith in the existence of something timeless, something beyond our vision.
One more question about skepticism, just to get this idea off the table. I think a subset of readers will be put off by your book and might dismiss it as,
Mhm.
the work of a grieving man desperate to convince himself that his loss wasn't final. And I'll put my own beliefs on the table in a second too. But first, what would you say to such readers?
I'd say that a rational view is not the only way to look at the world, that we have our Western society, especially, is dominated by rational thinking. It indeed has led to the great material success and advancement of the modern world. But I acknowledge that throughout the book. All the way through, I write about the psychology of what was happening to me. I present that as the rational explanation for what I was going through. Yet, as the journey unfolded, the the reality, the truth of this unseen, this unseen world, reality, realm, it became so powerful for me, so dominant. And just because we can't see it, does it mean it doesn't exist?
Well, this is a question you explore throughout the book, and I think it's so interesting. But even for the skeptics among us, I mean, I don't subscribe to any religion personally. My mother was a Catholic, and I was forced to go to mass as a child, something I just found excruciatingly boring, and I did everything I could to evade it. And
I'm going, it's so boring too.
uh, so I don't really have any. I think my light's just going to go out like a candle, and that's probably it. But I think your book still has much to offer, even readers who might have views like this. I mean, passages like this, for example, you say, we leave little time and space for the transcendent. Rushed, narrow self interest has left an emptiness in our hearts. And you're speaking about the spiritual lack in our materialist lives, but it also makes me reflect on how caught up we are in the day to day deadlines and the routines and the struggle for survival. And we seldom stop to think about how little time we may have left with those we care about. So I think the transcendent can take many forms here, and there's much to offer readers like me as well.
Very true, Ryan. If my little meditation when I sit down every morning, it that brings me moments of peace and clarity, and exactly as you just say, priorities sort themselves out. I think, oh, I haven't spoken to my daughter today. I should give her a call. Or what am I writing today? And a notion, an idea, the shape of the day, even in that 15 minutes, just sitting quietly in a room, that clarity comes to me of what's important, what I should focus on.
Hmm.
And that's so valuable than just leaping out of bed, having a bowl of cornflakes and charging off. Of course, I'm fortunate that I can do that, but I think most of us can do that. Most of us could get up 15 minutes earlier and just have that quiet moment and reflect on what is of value today. What do I want to give to today, and what do I want to achieve today?
You speculated the book that grief is unexpressed love. Is that why so many of us struggle to let go? Like we feel guilt at our own failures in our relationships, coupled with a sense that we didn't make the most of our time with that person. Is
Oh, yes. Failures in relationships. Oh, yes. And the regret that we didn't make enough of the time, of those moments. The number of times that Katrine, she would have to drag me from my desk, whatever book I was writing, and
I
say,
relate to that. Yeah.
"It's the weekend, let's go for a walk." And I'd go, "I just have to finish this." And in the end, I would agree, and those were the richest moments. They were the richest moments. It was from her insistence that enriched my life, our life together, that was brought the moments of greatest happiness. dragging me away from the desk.
I completely can relate to that. It's going to happen again
Yes,
this
you're taking
weekend.
the weekend off. I understand you're taking the weekend off. You're being dragged away from your desk.
Yeah, but much more willingly after having read your book, I have to say. And
Good, good, Ryan. I'm glad. I'm glad.
so you said that you had no intention of writing a memoir of your life together. I think that would have been my first instinct, to sit down and try to capture memories before they fade away. So why did you dismiss that idea initially?
Because I wanted to move forward,
Mm,
because I didn't want to dwell in the past, because Katrine was the love of my life, but she was dead. And I wanted to find where she had gone. And I realize how that sounds. And 5 years ago, I would have thought a statement like that, a quest like that is totally, totally bananas. To find where she's gone, she's dead. Come on, get a life. I had never written a book without her by my side. So if I was to write another book, I needed to find her. So I I went looking for her, and the way to find her and again, her is in quotes because she, as an individual, did not exist anymore. The way to find her was to go to as many different societies and belief systems that I could to try to understand how that society would conceive of the afterlife
mm,
or of heaven. So, what it would have been like for us, Katrine and me, if we had been Tibetan Buddhists in Bhutan, or if we had been Shipibo people in the Amazon, or if we had been Lakota in the Western United States, or Coast Salish on Vancouver Island. I wanted to, and of course the Abrahamic religions as well. I wanted to try to see what we would have felt, what we would have believed if we were part of those faith systems. And so and the way to do that, I the way, because I'm a travel writer. I was I was setting out to travel to places beyond space and time. How was I able to do that? How would I do that? So I hit on the notion of going to places on our physical planet, and where the veil had been thin, where the two realms in myth, in stories, in the Bible, in the Quran, where the two worlds met, where the unseen and the seen met, where the transient are transient and the immortal met. And so places like the first place for me was Jacob's Rock, place called Bet El now by the Israeli settlers who lived there, and it was the rock on which the biblical patriarch Jacob had fallen asleep, and he dreamt of a ladder to heaven. And of all the Old Testament stories, that somehow, because it was a dream, that seemed the most believable to me. Sure, dream of a ladder to heaven, angels going up and down it, no problem. Sure. No, and so I spent the night there on Jacob's Rock without permission, with the Israeli Defense Force live firing all around. Yeah, and I didn't see a ladder to heaven. But it seemed to me it was the place to begin, and it was an extraordinary night because of it was an extraordinary night because of the beauty of the natural world, the beauty of the sky. I write about how this amazing phenomena, natural phenomena. Early in the night, just around midnight, this clouds came off the sea and covered Jacob's Rock, and I couldn't see anything. All sound, it blanketed out all sounds, Ramallah and the other camps around, all because Jacob's Rock is surrounded by Palestinian camps and cities. And I was in this isolated, cloud-covered, silent place, and that moment I could start to imagine what it would have been like, how frightening it would have been for the patriarch Jacob, if he ever existed, to have to be in that place and not be able to see anything. Really, such a small such a small part of the world. And then this extraordinary natural phenomena happened where the clouds started to open, and it was like in the haze, these almost holes appeared, and I could look into them, into the star-lit blackness of space, if that makes any sense. This and it was like seeing infinity. Of course, it was a visual phenomena, a natural phenomena, but I was looking through these holes that appeared in the sky, and it was like I was being given. I interpreted it as being given a chance to see beyond this haze that surrounds us, that we live in, these shadows we live in. And I was seeing these into eternity. And it was just, that's how I interpreted it. And it was just so, so beautiful.
Dreams are a natural place to begin your investigations too. You wrote about Carl Jung's notion that God speaks chiefly through dreams and visions, and the Babylonians and the Greeks believed this too. I remember I was reading, I think it's in Spirit of Place, Lawrence Durrell's collection, and he talked about going to Epidaurus, and at Epidaurus it was a holy site in ancient Greece, and injured or sick pilgrims would come there in search of a cure. They'd make their way to this ritual site, and they would first undergo a series of purification rituals, baths, and a cleansing diet, and then they would make an offering to the temple, and then they would sleep in the temple precincts and have a dream, hopefully, which then the priest would interpret for them and help them to understand this message that they just received. And I remember in Durrell's story, he was talking to the keeper of this site, and the guy said, I had to change jobs and go someplace else. He said, why would you want to do that? This is such a beautiful place to work. And he said, the dreams, I just was plagued by dreams in this place. He didn't know about the connection. So I went there for a magazine story, and I remember I thought, I'm going to ask the keeper if he's experienced such things. So I knocked on the little booth where the security guard was, and he slid the thing open, and I said, I asked if he had any strange dreams while working there. And he didn't speak much English, and I don't speak Greek, so he just glared at me and said, I don't sleep, and slammed the window. He thought I was accused of sleeping on the job.
Yeah, well, yeah. As you say, dreams were key, were very important to the Babylonians, to the Greeks, to the Romans, and they were seen as a way to connect. And Jung, a way to connect certainly to the subconscious, and maybe to the collective unconscious. That's certainly the interpretation. And dreams were, if you like, my first vehicle, the first means by which I thought I could reach her. I could reach Katrine. And I did dream about her, but they didn't, the dreams about her didn't have a veracity. They were dreams. They weren't a connection. And I was looking for a connection. I was looking for something vibrant. I needed something vibrant. And it didn't come from dreaming of her. And it was more, if you like, I was given pointers. Not more in daydreams. I would go to sacred places in the UK and beyond, or be involved in longer meditation moments, and these it was like another individual, another voice would come to me and would just suddenly be there. The first one happened in this extraordinarily important place to me called Knowlton in Dorset in England, and it's a stone. It was a stone circle and earthworks, and then in about 1000 A.D. The Normans plopped a church on top of it, as they often did all across Europe, taking over the sacred spot. And it's now a ruin. Now it's about a dozen miles south of Stonehenge. And I first went there. I just happened on it as a 20-year-old. And and it was a summer day, and I had to be nearby for a very boring job, and I had a couple of hours to kill, and so I was told, go to the Knowlton. And it's one of those places, and I think we all have them, one of those places in the world which I just loved. I just felt so comfortable there. And I lay down on the earthen bank of the original circle, and fell asleep. And a month or two later, I was back in Canada, and I related the story to my then girlfriend, and she said, out of the blue, "One day you will go back there and you will meet an old man." I went, "Okay, Sue, fine, okay, I'll go back there." Where'd that come from? And in the intervening decades, I did go back once or twice, but not often. But after Katrine died, I felt this need to go back there, to this place which had been special and had felt important to me, and I didn't know why. And I went back there, and there were a few people there, no old men. And eventually they went off. They went away, and I had the place to myself. And so I thought, well, I'll have a little doze like I did before. and so I lay down on the ring bank as I had before, and I sort of slipped to listen to the bees and the birds in the sky, and started to doze. And it was a dream. It was a dream. That's the rational explanation. A stranger, a young male person with very large ears, appeared before me in my dream, in my head. He wasn't physically there. And he cupped his ears and he said, "Walking through the white circle." Now, but it felt like an invitation. It felt like I was being told to listen. And then I could walk through this white circle. I would be able to go beyond this physical world which had contained me, the transient physical world. And so I resolved at that moment to start listening to my dreams, and then to move beyond dreams. And then, of course, I realized that I was the old man. And that prediction from 50 years, no, 45 years earlier. Yeah. And of course, you can explain it all as coincidence and chance, and me drawing together these obscure life experiences. But it felt, when I started listening, it felt like I was making a connection through that veil to something immortal.
So you explored a lot of sacred sites in your travels, but you also explored experiences, and rituals connect the physical body with metaphysical ideas. They're an acting out of these cosmic concepts and these connections. Were you specifically drawn to traditions that have physical rituals?
Right, it was the most extraordinary things. I didn't plan this book. I didn't plan where I would go next. It was this, once again, I'm going to say, doors opened, and it was extraordinary. The mechanics of the trip was, for example, I went to, as I mentioned, I went to Jacob's Rock, spent the night there, and everything had fallen into place. I met a remarkable individual there who helped me get to the rock and didn't get me permission to be there and didn't tell me what to do with the Israeli Defense Force, but that's another story. But but and and everything worked. When we travel and things fall into place, there's this sense of it is meant to be. And I was speaking about that as I started the next stage. I thought I need to go to India, and so out of the blue, I had a contact with an individual in Delhi, and I told her how things had worked so smoothly and perfectly in in the Holy Land, and she said to me, "Well," she's Hindu. She said to me, "Well, that's because the universe will continue sending loving guides to guide you on your journey. Well, of course. Of course it's working out." And that's how the whole book came together. I would make a trip, then come home for about a month. Each of the trips, I think there are about 12 or 15 major journeys I made in the book. And I would make a journey, and then I would come home for 2 months and write about that while it was fresh, capture it on the page with as much truth and honesty and directness as I could. And during the latter stages of that, inevitably, thank goodness, the next the next destination would make itself apparent. It didn't make a list saying, "Oh, okay, I better go to Africa and somehow I have to get in Buddhism," and da, da. It just unfolded. And this extended, ingrained in me the sense that in some way the journey was being guided. As the woman in Delhi had said, I felt I was being guided. And then as the book progressed, I felt, as I alluded to before, that it wasn't me writing the book alone, that Katrine, and again, I put her name in quotes, Katrine was writing it with me, as she had been beside me in all the books before.
You said that at the beginning of your quest, you were too focused on practicalities and your own expectations. And you write, the importance of the unplanned had slipped my mind, of being open to experiences that were beyond conscious control. And the story you just related, I mean, I can completely relate to that as a traveler. That's one of the earliest lessons I learned on my very first journey was, to kind of forget about the pre-plan, to watch and wait and to be open. And some path always open. Somebody would show up that would take you to exactly the right place, or maybe some experience that was waiting for you that you would have never seen if you weren't open to it. So I can relate to that experience in a smaller way as well in my own life.
Not in a smaller way, but how can you explain that rationally? It's this sense of emptying oneself, which of course is at the basis of all all the great faiths, that you need that through prayer, through meditation, y- y- you you should aspire to empty oneself, to be open to exactly that. And yes, you can do that sitting on a sitting on a park bench or waiting by the harbor side for something to happen. And as you just said, Ryan, something does happen. It just happens. And for me, it happened on this exactly the same structure, but on this large scale.
The more I find, the more you open to that sort of feeling, the more it shows up in your life as well. I mean, I found that with I applied that to all my early magazine assignments. I would read up on a place and, get some ideas in my head. I might have a story thread I was interested in, but I wouldn't plan much. And then I would just go to the place and I would just kind of sit down and wait. And this
Yeah.
thread of something would always appear and lead you into something you never expected. So that openness, I think, is something we lose in our day-to-day lives. And you
Yes.
touch on this too when in the book you said you were leafing through Katrine's journals, and you said that as an enthusiast of linear narrative, I rework experience, look for answers, try to find order in chaos. Her notebooks did not tame her thoughts. Instead, they again revealed a woman alive to the moment. So did part of your quest kind of in this part of this letting go of your own way of seeing, were you also trying to see things through her eyes in a sense? Her way of
Yeah.
seeing?
Yes. I think so. I was I was channeling Katrine, I suppose, or channeling my memory of Katrine, channeling my knowledge of Katrine, my love for Katrine. I was channeling that into my life. I was trying to live, if you like, both as myself and as she might have lived. And yes, I was writing. I was on a journey. I had an objective. I wanted to find, quote unquote, find her. That's very narrative driven. That's very direct. But at the same time, there was, as you say, in her journals, I saw. Well, I knew this part of her. It drove me mad at times. This lack of the linear. This not lack. This sense that it wasn't the linear which was important. It was the wholeness, the oneness, the living in the moment that was important. And so, yes, I did try to try to find a balance between both those ways of being.
That's a challenge for somebody in our profession as well. Like you also wrote in the book that I'd become a writer so that experiences wouldn't slip through my fingers, which of course they did anyway. And I read a book years ago called How We Die by Sherwin Newland. And he said studies have indicated that of all the professions, medicine is the one most likely to attract people with high personal anxieties about dying. And I've often wondered if writing attracts people with high personal anxieties about memory and forgetting or losing the past. For myself, I tend to obsess over, capturing all these moments. But as you say, you're not being open to everything else when you're trying so busily to do that and to can everything.
Sure, sure. So it's if I had to reduce my my life's motivation to a single expression or fear, it would be the fear of loss.
Yeah.
Early death of my father, losing other people who were very important to me early in my life, loss of Katrine, and 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 so yes, I agree. Maybe the as writers we try to hang on. We try to we hang on to those moments. We put them down on paper in the mis in the completely deluded belief that somehow that will perpetrate them. But of course, they're lost forever. They're gone.
So towards the end of the book, looking back on your journey, you said, I'd been a kind of anthropologist, an objective participant observer, darting around the globe, taking notes about other people's customs. And that's what immediately came to mind for me while reading your book. Participant observation and your kind of anthropological approach. I studied anthropology at school, and
Mhm.
despite not being religious, I do have an abiding interest in the cultural toolkits and beliefs of different societies, especially rituals and rites of passage. So that's one of the things I like most about your book. You're experiencing these rituals and going into them with an open mind, trying to see what they have to offer you, to see if they give you any clues or speak to you at all. But the necessity to participate in them and not to prejudge them is really important, I think.
Ryan, I really like that cultural toolkit. That's beautiful. That's because we're all we're all mortals trying to find a way to exist on this planet, and we need a toolkit to do that. And I find it fascinating. I'm driven to understand how Aboriginal Australians conceive of the world, or how the Maori deal with the death of loved ones, or what the how the Lakota approach it, and I feel it's enriching. It enriches us. That's one of the, I suppose, maybe that's why I'm a travel writer. I travel to places to try to understand, in a desire to understand, in a need to understand that society or time or if those individuals, and then I try that understanding. I then share with the readers in the hope that it will enrich them as the understanding has enriched me.
I think that's what the best travel writing does as well. And so I want to ask you about a few of the cultures and rituals that you described in the book, and to give listeners a better sense of what they can expect when they pick it up and read it. You traveled to such a broad range of places, and unsurprisingly, I found some more attractive than others. Some spoke to me more than others did. And your experience of
Yes.
attending a retreat in an Indian ashram, that sounded completely bizarre. I was expecting some sort of like yoga and meditation retreat with a room full of hippie types, chanting by day and, eating vegetarian food from a single bowl at night. But you found yourself in what sounded like a theme park with a flashy guru doing like a daily floor show that reminded me more of Tony Robbins than an actual pursuit. So what were you thinking when you saw that?
I had never heard about Sadhguru. I didn't know he was a best New York Times best-selling author, that on his social media platform, I think he has platforms, he has 55 million followers. I had expected exactly what you've just alluded to. I thought I'd turn up at this ashram, it would be a bit faded and a bit dirty, and yeah, they vegetarian food only, lots of old hippies. Not a bit of it. There was in my intimate Grace of Yoga week or 8 meditation retreat, there were 3,000 people in one hall, and and Sadhguru was absolutely loved by them. He and these people came from mostly Indian, many of many castes, many different layers of society, Indian society, but maybe 20% foreigner. So from every corner of the world, and they just loved his inner engineering, he calls his program. And uh, and when he would step on stage, because it was he was such a, a showman. The each day would be set up. There was lots of meditation. There were retreats. There were rituals, and every day for 2 hours, he would appear on stage in front of the 3,000 people gathered together. And I think there were 10,000 online as well. And he would give a 2 hour, remarkably inspiring lecture. Nothing really original in it. It was rehashing everything we know from all the great religions. But and the people, the 3,000, the 2,999 people around me were transfixed by his 2 hour talk. He gave them and continues to give many people a sense of purpose, a sense of value, a sense of what's important in their lives, a sense of priorities. And that is a wonderful, rich thing to have done, a wonderful giving thing to have done. He didn't do it for me. I didn't find anything spiritual in that experience for me. 2,999 people did. I was the one who went, "What is this about? This doesn't see. I'm not going to find my wife here," and and I'm very pleased to have taken part in it. I had never seen that sort of gathering before, that sort of size of gathering, devoted gathering, this complete surrender. 2,999 people surrendering to him. I was told not to take notes, put away your notebook, just experience it. And I tried, but that still didn't do it for me. It wasn't, all power to him, but it was for me, that structured ashram.
But at the same time, the writer part of your brain must have been just thinking, this is gold. Like, this is fascinating.
Oh,
Just the culture
yeah.
around it and the experience itself. I mean, that's
Oh, yes. Yes, yes, and people, I it's you have to pay to go, and I went not the cheapest, the second cheapest, uh, level, and non-air conditioned room with 3 other people, and it was still $500, £500 for the 10 days, and it's quite a money-making enterprise. That's, not his Sadhguru's objective, but and he's also around the world, I think he has, because there's now 2 or 3 centers, he has 7 or 8,000 volunteers who run everything as volunteers, and and the people, the others in my room, there was one who's a lawyer, a Silicon Valley lawyer, a really intelligent young man. There was head of an advertising firm from Johannesburg, and he, not long after, gave up. I've subsequently heard, we became quite friendly. Gave up everything in South Africa, gave away the companies, sold his house, gave all the money to Sadhguru, and moved to the ashram as a volunteer. And
Wow.
there's quite a few like him. They surrender themselves to him.
Wow.
Wasn't That wasn't the road I was going to take.
No, I don't think that would appeal to me either. But in another part of India, though, you encountered the phenomenon of living gods, boys who undergo a ritual called, in English, the translation was the divine dance of deity, where they become possessed by a god. Have you come across that? There's a Nepali tradition of the living goddess as well. It's quite similar to that. Isabella Tree wrote a book
Yes.
about that. I spoke to her earlier this year. It's published by Eland, The Living
Yeah.
Goddess. That would be right up
Right.
your alley. It's fascinating.
We should have spoken before, Ryan. I missed it. But
You're
yes,
you're finished by then,
the
I think, by the time I encountered that book, but yeah, right up your alley. But
it,
so to
yeah,
describe the ritual.
yes, in Kerala, it's the ritual. It's the Thayam, it's called, and this is an annual event. Happens in villages all over Kerala. It predates Hinduism. It was like so much else. It was absorbed into Hinduism when 2,000 years ago, 3,000, 2,500 years ago. And the Thayam ritual is the young. They're almost all men, young men. They become they dress in the most extraordinary traditional costumes, and and they when they're ready, when the village is ready, and the sort of village square, because it happens only in villages. It doesn't happen in any sort of big stadium or anything. It just happens in local villages. And when the village square is made sacred, the Thayam dancer, fully clothed in most extraordinary red costume, always he, will hold a mirror in front of him and stare into the mirror until he can no longer see himself. He vanishes, and that is perceived as the god taking him over. And for the next 8 hours, it's an all-night ceremony. And there's usually about 6 dancers, and all 6 dancers will go through this ritual of looking at the mirror until they vanish, and they become possessed by particular gods. And it's usually related to fire. And so the 3 ceremonies I went to, they would then spend the whole night running through huge bamboo fires and uh, and 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 not being burnt. And then at the end of the night, there is this moment, because they have been in this spirit, this, what's the right word, this sacred place, and some sort of connection happens, and they speak. It's not them speaking. They will speak to the villagers. They will go around sort of an arc of villagers who have been sitting there through the night, and they will speak to each one and give a word of advice. And one of the former dancers I spoke to said, "It wasn't me speaking. I don't know where it came from. But these, these truths, these very poignant for the individual truths, will come out of the dancer, the god's mouth." And at the end of one of the 3 that I went to, the god, the god came up to me and looked at me and gave me a sacred flower, and said, "She has always been with you and will be with you on this journey." Who is this man? He doesn't know who I am. Was I the only Westerner there? Yes, probably. But there was no indication that I was grieving. I was bereaved. And that was another of those moments, which of course will have a rational explanation somewhere, but it was like a voice from somewhere else.
That's very much what Isabella describes too in her travels in Nepal. These are little kids in this case, little girls who have
Oh,
no real experience of the world. They live quite sheltered lives, but they're coming out with these deep pronouncements that no, and their behavior is not the behavior of a kid. They're kind of unusually calm. They're not running around. They're very calm and composed. It's really remarkable.
wow. Oh, I'm sorry I didn't. That's in Nepal, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No. Yes. Yes. I had not similar experiences, but from an individual in Bhutan. But again, it's based on Tibetan Buddhism and the ancient, the pre-Buddhist Bon religion of the Himalayas, which was absorbed into Buddhism in that part of the world.
Yeah, I've got a problem with Buddhism, Rory. I mean,
Okay.
personal issue. So it makes sense to me that life is suffering and that permanence is an illusion and that our own attachments cause suffering. But the goal of meditating endlessly until we can free ourselves from suffering by becoming some sort of unattached observer, it seems to me a way of removing myself from life. To exist in that detached state doesn't seem like living to me. It seems like squandering the time that we have. So you've experienced this tradition more closely than I have. So have I missed something here? Have I gotten it wrong?
No, that's a very interesting interpretation. What's it called? The hardest religion or the cruelest faith because of that. Because there's no illusion about a life after death. There's no illusion about the individual surviving in a sort of heaven. It's just, as you well know, it's just the karma. It's just the good or bad works that one does in one's life that is reincarnated into the next in the next being. It's I found it when I was in Bhutan. I found it very comforting. Isn't the right? It is not the right word. Very real,
Hmm.
very true. But then, then right at the end of the trip, I thought this was the answer for me in a way. I thought Buddhism, the lack of romanticism and the cold reality of this finite life we live. I thought this was the answer for me. This was the way to go forward. This is how I would cope without Katrine. Again, in quotes, Katrine. And but then again, events, things. It was like hearing voices and getting messages. Sounds so crass. Messages. It was again like I was being directed, and I was led away from that into back, onward to faith in the existence of something we can't see, which isn't rejected by Buddhism, especially Tibetan Buddhism with its incorporation of Bon. They're all for spirits and ghosts and soothsayers. Evidently, the Dalai Lama, he always, before he makes a big decision, he will always consult the the monasteries or the Dar es Salaam soothsayer.
Yeah, I find Tibetan Buddhism particularly baffling. I spent some time in Tibet many years ago, so particularly baffling, but it's fascinating. And that was one of the places you visited. Bhutan was the one that I think appealed most to me, that intrigued me the most in terms of the landscape and the culture, and just
Mm.
where did this worldview come from? It's amazing. They've got it down so meticulously in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, so called, and
Yes.
right down to what 49 days that you're in transit, basically before you're like, how do they know this? Where did they come up with this? It's
It's extraordinary that what I hadn't realized is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It's in effect 49 days of prayers. I'm oversimplifying, and a Rinpoche or a monk every day, he will read the appropriate prayer, and I'm grossly oversimplifying, and it will say, "Today is day 19, and you will see two white doors, and one white door and one black door, and you have to choose which door to go through. I suggest you go through the white door." And this is how the Rinpoche or the monk will help direct the individual through the deceased through the 49 days of Bardo. An extraordinary idea. Extraordinary.
It just strikes me now that when you're describing this, that the Tibetan plateau is such a barren landscape. I was wondering, how did they come up with such a rich tradition? Where did this come from in such impoverished, high altitude kind of, not a wasteland, but it's pretty barren. But so many of the world's great religions did come from desert places as well. I wonder if there's a connection there.
Very interesting. Well, Judaism and Islam both came out of the desert.
Yeah.
It's a very to allude to that. Not in Tibet. I've never been to Tibet. I was just in. It wasn't possible to go there. My focus was on Bhutan and Tibetan Buddhism within Bhutan, which is 98% of Bhutanese are Tibetan Buddhists. I would think in terms of Tibetan Buddhism, it is to do with Bon. It's incorporating within finding a way, much like the Christians building churches on top of the megalithic sites in sacred megalithic sites in Britain and Europe. Buddhism did the same, mixing Himalayan Bon together with Buddhism and coming up with Tibetan Buddhism. This unique school and 49 days. Yep, that's it. That's Sparta. 49 days. Which doors shall I choose today? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, they're just traditions like that are so fascinating. I don't think I will ever understand them or grapple with them. But I mean, much of my life is not understanding.
There are such beautiful moments in it. For example, that it's 3 days before the first 3 days, the deceased does not realize they have died, and it's only when they're there like a Sartre novel. They're walking beside their family, but their family can't see them or hear them, and it's only when they realize they're not casting a shadow, or when they walk through a river and they then come walk on dry land and they leave no footprints. It's only then that they begin to realize. And yet it's the first 21 days, this first early period of mourning, the family will bring to them in sacred houses, the family will bring to them their favorite foods and present them. And this is what a rich ritual and way of dealing with grief.
Yeah.
That for 21 days you go to this place, which is and remember and feed the spirit of the one you've lost. That's really beautiful. And then at the end, it's not a photograph of each individual, but it is a graphic which reflects their lifetime. At the end of those 21 days, which is part of the 49 days, the priest takes a drawing from each of these individuals, and he burns it. And like the body has been burnt, like the body was burnt on day one. And that, again, that's a ritual that helps in the acceptance of the inevitability of the loss of the loved ones.
And it's true. The person is with you for those initial days vividly. I mean, you think you see the person you've lost sometimes around the corner, like their presence is still so vivid. So preparing these ritual meals and stuff like that, it makes sense to me how that would help. Yeah.
Yes.
And another tradition that you explored, a worldview that I found very compelling. You experienced cyclical time at Lakota Reservation in the U.S. You said that in their world, heaven wasn't a distant destination to be found by treading a straight and narrow path towards eternal bliss. Instead, it was all that surrounded the living. Time cycled around life, and those cycles grew around each other like ripples in a pool or the rings of a tree. And most, if not all cultures saw the world in terms of cycles. before the advent of Christianity, there was no linear path of steady progress with the end goal of salvation. Instead, there was living in accordance with natural cycles rather than fighting against them. So do you think that the linear thinking that the West got from Christianity has caused us to focus on some kind of vague or hoped for future, and in doing so, to lose sight of the present? That it separated ourselves from the natural world and our place in it.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, here, so much one could say about this, Ryan, but here, on a personal level, here, if you like, is my linear, rational approach, looking forward to writing the book, finishing the book, talking about the book, and Katrine's living in the moment, non-linear approach. But it's the Lakota, and not most First Nations people in North America, they have this idea of the cyclical nature of times, and not only them there, it's prevalent in Africa as well, in South America as well, and that I find so enriching and appealing, and it's the sense that we're surrounded by, which we are in our memory. You can rationalize it and say we are in our memory. We're surrounded by all who have come before us. And so, yes, the Lakota, who I came to know most closely, I suppose, they 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 cherish. They don't so much look forward to the hereafter because they believe it's all around them. So they aren't projecting forward, and that we don't know to what extent that's Christianity's involvement, because they do have a concept of spirits in the Milky Way, and a journey to meet a wise woman who will direct them into the next life if they are able to say their name in Lakota, the Lakota language. We don't really today. We can't say how old those ideas are. They seem a bit like add-ons as a result of Christianity after the missionaries got in there and did their work. And I think the more fundamental belief is that there's ripples in a pool or there's tree rings. It's all life going around and around and in a cyclical structure, and hence the importance of living in the moment, hence the importance of being in the moment. And heaven wasn't as for the early Israelis, and perhaps in the early Bon people as well. It wasn't. They weren't getting out of a desert. They weren't getting out of the mountains. They didn't need to envisage a better place, a dream place, a heaven. The Lakota people, the native North Americans, because they were living in it. They believed their world was no different from heaven. That when you die, you're there, right beside, or in parallel, or in something that can't be understood. The Lakota, they call what we would call God, they call Wakan, and Wakan isn't the great spirit or the great God as we tend in the West tend to conceive God. It is just great spirit or great unknown. So Wakan isn't at all individualized. Wakan to the Lakota is better understood as force or rhythms. So it is an approaching thunderstorm. It is springtime. It is birth. All that, it is falling in love. It is loss. That all that is Wakan. That energy, that force. And I find that such a beautiful, enhancing, life enhancing way of looking at the world, because it's all everything around us. Not so much in our little boxes in the UK or Sicily or Japan, but when you're out in the forest in North America, that's your heaven. That's the world, and the force is all around you. God is in the song of the sparrow or the blackbird, or God is in the water running through the river you're walking beside. God is what you're feeling for your partner back at home. And that's so enriching. If we could hang on to that in our day-to-day life, in our little boxes,
Mm.
I think we would be better people for it.
So you explored to experience many different spiritual traditions on your journey. Did any of them resonate with you so much that you might continue with them? And which ones? Well, we already talked about the flashy guru kind of Vegas sound and light show. Didn't speak to you at all. So did any of them connect with you deeply enough that you might carry these practices forward?
Almost all of them, I connected with me. I connected with almost all of them. I recognized elements which I found profoundly true in all of them. But I think I will remain a non-church goer. I'm I feel that just and this is a very personal decision, of course. I feel I carry with me the richness of a little understanding of so many faith systems, and in a way, I've incorporated them. I have incorporated them into me, certainly in terms of values, in terms of prioritizing what's important in life, and in my quiet moment of 10 minutes or 15 minutes of meditation every morning, that they are all there. They make that possible. They they bring me a great sense of no, that's not true. They don't bring me a great sense. They hint. They hint at this oneness of the subjective and the objective, of the self and the other, as the Shinto priest told me. And that something is supporting it. And the Shinto priest, he called it great nature. The Lakota called it the Wakan. I think it's what is behind all the faiths, and it's what gets me through the day.
Yeah, you said you wrote at the end that, or that in the end, you shifted away from the left to the right hemisphere of the brain. You abandoned objectivity and embraced ambivalence. So, what does that look like in your daily life?
Oh, confusion. That constant clash between rational thinking and belief in something unseen, faith in something unseen. It's oh, if only it was black and white and clear and easy to navigate this, but it ain't. It ain't, not for me. There's there's a wonderful moment. One of the former archbishops of Canterbury, in England, he was interviewed and asked how long he prays, or how long he prays or meditates every day, and he said, "Oh, about 10 seconds." And the interviewer was shocked. You're the Archbishop of Canterbury. What do you mean? Only 10 seconds? And he replied, "Yeah, but it takes me at least an hour to get there." So he sits down, as I think so many people of faith, or people looking for faith, or looking for an understanding, do or should do it. Sit down and just find that that emptiness, and that can be found through prayer, through meditation, through chanting.
Yeah, even just getting out in nature, getting
Yeah,
out, taking a
yeah,
hike, going up into the mountains, and just sitting and being still. Yeah, but I think
yes,
this not knowing is what makes life interesting as well. I think.
well, that's how Sadhguru began. He, our star guru. He, as a young man, I think at the time he had a chicken farm or something like that, and he got on his motorbike and he went up in the hills. And maybe this is what will come to you soon, Ryan. He went up in the hills and he sat on a rock, contemplating, thinking about life, and in that moment, he had this sense of oneness with the world, with the rock, with the air, with everything around him, everything he could see and couldn't see. And that was the spark that sent him on this journey to now have 55 million online followers, because he sat on a rock and suddenly felt he was part of the world. Well, yeah, we are.
If only podcasting were that easy, geez, and writing. So, I mean, we've barely touched on the many cultures that you explored in this book. You went to the Peruvian Amazon. You met a medium in Bhutan. There's so many things for listeners to discover here. So, but I'll ask you my final question, and it's a really easy one. What remains of us after we die?
Brian, you've promised me an easy question at the end.
You've been exploring these paths. I mean, yeah. What is it? What do you think it means in the end? What did you come to discover for you? What remains of us?
What remains? Well, at the least, memory remains. What was Homer sent Odysseus to the end of the world, and he met was it Achilles? He met Achilles there, and Achilles was in the afterlife, and he said, "Mate, it's real. You don't want to be here, and it's not a great place." The ancient Greeks didn't have much time. There was no beatific heaven for them, and Achilles said, we only exist here. The ancient Greeks called the dead shades, because they only existed as long as they were remembered.
Yeah.
So as long as the living remembered them.
And as long as that's the case, we've got all the people whose lives we've touched, all the people we've loved, all the memories that we created, the experiences we've had, the friends we've made that we've raised a glass with. I think that's not bad.
Yep. And we hang on to it, and then it goes.
So the book is called Geography of Heaven, and it's out this week in the UK. So thank you for your time today, Rory. It's always great to see you, and it's always great to talk with you.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have been invited.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Personal Landscapes. If you like the podcast, please give it a rating on iTunes and subscribe through your favorite app. And please consider joining my members club on Substack. You'll be supporting an independent, ad-free podcast that publishes carefully curated conversations like this one, backed by decades of reading. Go to personallandscapespodcast.com for details.